This week, is backing a horse bad? Mares that are very hormonal or expressive? If a horse puts in a pig route, is it anxious or has it had enough? And why a horse might refuse to lead. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Mark, there's a few discussions going on in the horse world at the moment about whether a horse should be backed or not, as in, should it go backwards or not? I've got a question here from Joanne, who's wondering what you think about it. Is it something that perhaps doesn't suit every horse? She's got a young mare who has been to one of your clinics, and it was the one that reared when was asked to go forwards. She's been working on her leading skills and she has improved a lot. And she's the one who would choose to stop over go if she's worried or confused, but she'll also try to run backwards, which is not a fun feeling at all. She's managed to stop it largely by making her take one step in her front leg across in a kind of a turn. But because of this, she's not keen on using the backup as a training tool, and she's just wondering what your thoughts are on the whole scenario about backing.
Yeah, well, I think there has been something that's come up about backing, about the damage backing does to horses. And there's a lot of horses that come to my clinics that if they keep backing up the way they are backing up, then I guess there will be long-term sort of physical damage that you would notice later on if they were sort of, if you do like a post-mortem on them, because of the way they're backing up with their body incorrectly. I see a lot of horses that run backwards really fast and not develop a good, soft, willing backup where the body is sort of, the mind is controlling the body softly. And you see them run back and their hocks are right underneath them and they just push with their hind legs, but they're not using the whole of their hip, stifle, hocks, fetlocks properly. So yeah, they put excess weight on different areas of the body, and I see horses back up like I call it the four-track backup, where there's the hind feet are spread wide, really bracey, pulling and paddling, and and they're pushing off their front feet and they're full of brace, and I'm sure that if a horse was continue to back up with that poor backup and poor posture, then there's damage that can be done. Just like horses that are cantered forward, on their forehand and always travelling incorrectly under saddle, there's going to be damage done. Just like horses that are walked forward in incorrect posture, there's going to be damage. So I think the article was saying it's not a natural thing for a horse to go backwards as well, and puts excess strain on the horse and causes damage. Everything we do with a horse, even if it's a forward movement done incorrectly, can cause early breakdown of the horse physically. And I think we've got to think about that. And a lot of horses I see at clinics, the ones that have quite a bad and looking chronically bad backup, tend to go forward bad as well. So their forward is not going to help their skeleton in the long run as much as their backup. And backup is an interesting thing. When a horse finds a soft backup, it's a nice, even 2-beat rhythm. Now, if horses didn't go backwards at all, and it wasn't something that was sort of somewhere in their mind, then they would not all have a 2-beat rhythm when they find that nice soft backup. Just like a trot is a 2-beat diagonal rhythm. Just about every horse out there, unless they're sort of gated and have those extra gaits, they'll just slip into a trot after a walk. It's just what they do. And it's not like every single trot's different. It's like the trot is a 2-beat diagonal rhythm. And a backup, when a horse slips into that soft backup, it's a 2-beat diagonal rhythm. It's not just like, oh, gee, I don't know what to do with my feet, I'm just paddling everywhere. So they all find that nice diagonal rhythm in the backup. So it tells me that there's something in their DNA that can go backwards and all find the same rhythm. So that's, to me, it's okay to back horses, and it's not that they do it really commonly, but there's times that a good solid horse and a good horse that knows, has good awareness of its body and out in a herd will gently back out of a situation. You've seen plenty of horses kind of run back a bit to kick or something like that. So it is in there that they can do it. I encourage people to teach their horses to back up well, correctly, thinking backwards. And I think backing is very good for the horse. It's very good to teach them to be a lot softer. It helps them lift up their forehand a bit more. Be more confident on their hindquarter when they're stepping off obstacles, stepping out of horse floats, trailers. They just get so much more confidence by being able to process softly what's behind them and use their rear view mirrors and also sometimes in an obstacle situation use those hind feet as little sensors to sense what's behind them and just quietly back out. For what humans are doing with horses and the places that we put them, I think it's essential to have a really soft backup and a good backup where the horse is loose and soft and backing properly, not full of brace or, like I said before, in a four-track backup or doing it with brace. You enhance the horse's strength and mobility, so it's not going to cause long-term skeletal damage because the horse is doing it themselves and they're not full of brace, just like any forward gear where they're balanced. They're doing it themselves. They're carrying the movement. There's not extra tension or stress on them.
So what does a bad backup look like?
Oh, well, the first thing the easiest thing I think that people look at in the backup is, are they in rhythm or out of rhythm? So a lot of backups where the horse is sort of laid in the forehand, they tend to sort of, so basically their left, being a diagonal rhythm, their left front foot will be picking up exactly in time as their right front foot picks up. So it's like the left hind, the right front pick up and they move together backwards and they both place together, and then the right hind and the left front will pick up, move together, place together in a 1-2-1-2 rhythm. So the first thing to see if a backup's bad is just look for the diagonal rhythm, and usually horses that are out of a rhythm are not thinking backwards very well. They're kind of fighting it emotionally in their thoughts. They've still got forward thoughts. And their forequarter, they learn to push off their forequarter and they're running late in their front feet and they're not using their hindquarter enough, so they're not equally balanced over their hind feet and their front feet. So first thing is they're out of rhythm. They've just got these different rhythms as they back up. Some have got a 4-beat backup rhythm. And the other thing also to look for is the dragging of the feet. So the second thing, that if you're standing side onto a horse, you look at the dragging of the feet. As I said before, not picking up in the knees nicely in the front. When they start to have good awareness and they lift and they use their hindquarter a little bit more, they pick up in their knees and their front feet pick up nice and brightly, and they pick up and come through. They don't kind of shuffle their feet. And also, I believe the back feet should be picking up fairly smoothly. Now, some people, they like a horse to just run backwards and cut a cow. Other people want a horse that's a bit more versatile, can do a lot of different things. Some people might want to do a bit of competition where it requires a bit of cattle work, but then another day they're doing obstacles and they might do a bit of dressage or anything like that. So I think a good backup is just one where they're equally balanced, picking up their feet in a nice 2-beat rhythm. And if you look at the back, like the back of a horse or the front of a horse, when you're looking at the backup, as in you're looking at the track of a horse, it's in a 2-track, just like they're walking forward. So the front, unless the horse has got a crookedness in the body where they're slightly crooked or a problem, they will have a 2-track walk forward and a 2-track backup. So that means the backup, the hind and the front feet are in the same track, so they're backing in the same track. When they're bracey, the hind end you'll see spread out and paddle, and go, and the feet are kind of widening. The whole pelvis widens, and that's not a good backup at all. That's one that I think causes a lot of strain on the horses. And also the wide hind feet backup. You don't have a nice pivot. You don't have a nice pivot point in the back end because it's not loose and mobile. And a lot of horses that I see that I think have got arthritis and problems in all through their hindquarter are ones that have been taught to back up in a hurry and turn in a hurry without being able to be loose in their back end, and be able to adjust their balance softly within turns and stuff like that. It's usually the ones that are tense and braced, been pulled around too fast or run backwards too fast while they were carrying a lot of tension and brace in their body. They're the ones that will have premature breakdowns and things like that. And they're the ones at clinics I see that the inside hind foot is not loose as they turn, and it's kind of twisting into the ground, and you see their whole hip twist as they turn, things like that. So and to get a good backup, your hindquarter yields, your backup, you get good turns and everything, and everything off of the backup becomes nice and soft. But the backup has to be a soft platform, a soft foundation to work off. So regarding your horse, the one that initially I saw at the clinic that reared, the rearing I address in giving the horse a good backup as an alternative to rearing and leading forward very well. So her problem was she pulled back into pressure, locked up the hind feet, reared. Okay, so by giving her good mobility in forward, leading forward very well, and giving her good mobility in backwards, then you take away that elevation and the hindquarter getting stuck and wanting to rear. Now, in relation of running backwards, just because you teach a horse a backup doesn't mean you've took the trouble out of a horse or strong thoughts. You've just taught it how to move in that direction. So just like sending a horse out at a canter on a lunge can teach it to run off. Well, a horse can run off anyway, but if you teach a horse to back up and you don't create a soft mindset or an understanding in a horse, then it can be another direction for that horse to move away when it's worried or avoid something else. So the backup's not the problem, and I would still continue to back the horse. So if a horse starts to run backwards, sometimes I just keep backing with them in hand until I take over the backup and they start to soften and follow the feel of the backup until I can place them where I'd like to place them. But running backwards is just another evasion of pressure. So basically more good leading, more forward, more steering under saddle. If they start to run backwards, you can sort of steer them out of it. But as soon as they sort of let go of the thought, you pick up the reins and say, now this is how you back up with me, back up with the feel. You need a good backup in any situation. So sometimes people, because the horse runs backwards, they avoid backing. But actually, when you look at the past, that horse has actually got taught to back up by running away from the bit. So every time they get worried, they start running backwards. So if it's one of those horses, then you basically pick up the backup until they're not frightened of the nose pressure or the bit pressure, and they're going, oh, I'm happy to back with this. I'm not running away from it. So you have to back them until they're not frightened in the backup. It's like saying a horse, every time it canters, it worries. I'm saying, well, maybe we have to teach it to not worry and canter, not just avoid canter. We have to figure out how to get it not to worry. So and that's the same as the backup.
The next question is about mares who are quite emotional. The first one is from Brenda. She's got a mare who has been spayed. She has no medical issues and she does take a hormone supplement. But she is a mare who is constantly in heat, constantly showing all the symptoms. Since she's been spayed, the behaviour hasn't changed at all. And Brenda's noticed that a few people that have also had their mares spayed, and it often isn't a real fix. So she's wondering if you've sort of what you know, Mark, about mares and what triggers them to come onto heat. Is it quite normal that they come into heat a lot if they don't fall pregnant? Does it take a teasing mare or a stallion to do it, and is it unusual if it doesn't? She'd just like to know a little bit more about what you know.
I guess I can only draw on the advice or the stories I've heard from people over the years that I've been starting horses for, and sometimes getting horses and mares that seem very hormonal. Like I had one horse at a clinic and she was constantly lactating and it was just her thing. And I've heard people have successful stories with, sometimes horses have had twisted ovaries, sometimes, they've had them spayed and they've had hormone supplements and their behaviour has improved a lot after that. And they've become a lot more settled and centred. Now, there is like a subject that I talk about a little bit at clinics, and I'll probably link this into the same subject when it comes to these the horses that can become very difficult and seemingly hormonal. Is I think experience is part of a horse's becomes their mindset. So just like life experience becomes a horse's maturity. So some horses, that horse is immature, but actually when you have a look at its mindset and the way it's been brought up, it's bound to be immature. And I've heard that in sometimes, Jenny spent time in Africa, and the maturity of the young kids over there at a younger age was much more mature than you'd see sort of now in a Western culture, where they're sort of a bit like hand reared, and sort of, there's too many not enough challenges out there for them, I'm guessing. So basically, when you come to, the horse that before it was spayed might have been hormonal, might have been in a funny environment, might have had a mare that was a bit sort of a mother that was like that, or whatever environment was, it didn't know how to communicate, process, and then things started to work, and it started to get angry, and then it started to carry tension, and then it's carrying tension because it doesn't make good decisions. But that becomes that horse, just like the horse that carries tension around people all the time, and everyone wonders why that horse is like that. It's like, well, they can let go of it, they just need to be shown an alternative. So I think there's horses that that's the way they become, and they don't know how to let go of the tension, so they're just kind of like that all the time, always anxious, don't know how boundaries work with other horses. They push too hard. Like, I've seen horses that have never been properly brought up in a herd, and then some trainers or owners have watched all these videos on how to chase a horse around a round yard and how to drive it backwards, forwards and sideways. And then you see this horse go in its first herd, and it does exactly what the human did to it. It just runs at horses, driving them off, and really unpredictable. The horses don't like it. It's like an extra culty type horse. But it just never knew and never learnt in a big herd how to sort of probe its way in and become soft and make good decisions and have good alternatives. And I just think they get stuck in a neuro pathway as well. So I believe that once the vets and the medications, or the hormone supplements, all that sort of stuff is not working, then you've got to look back at mindset and how that horses process information and things like that, and then we start to train in a way that says, before I do anything with you, I want to get one thing clear. I want you in a good, mature, centered mindset. Okay, if that means we stand here and you start to make good, cautious decisions before I ask too much of you, then so be it. If I have to spend a week, a month doing that, teaching you how to think in a better way and process things in a better way. There's a horse in Queensland that I helped. I think I was the fourth trainer or something. I think it basically chased people out of round yards. If you went picking up manure in its paddock, it'd turn and just run at you, double barreling, like boom, 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 like a gunslinger sort of thing with its hind feet. And but it was seeming like a really quiet horse. And then when I heard the whole process, how it was, weaned, and how it was kind of taught when it was little, and then I thought, well, no wonder this horse is like this. So it didn't know a right or wrong way to communicate. So it did something one day, it seemed to work. So then it just kept doing it, thinking, oh, that's what I do. And until we showed it an alternative and different things like that. And then, but just never had that available when it was brought up. And there's so many kids in our society that, never had that kind of grounding, that they, people might blame them for a lot of things, but they never had any boundaries or anything when they were young. So they just become a certain mindset. So I'm thinking that's really what's happening with these horses, and they're harder to get out of that, but we really have to try hard to do it.
Sarah is in a similar position with her mare. She doesn't seem to be getting anywhere at the moment. It's an Andalusian mare. She's always in heat, aggressive towards other horses, never displays any sign of remote affection for human or horse. There's never any grooming, and she never lets them get close to her. Her extreme reaction to touch on most body parts by a hand doesn't seem to get any better. So she's not willingly really accepting a rider, and especially not accepting the legs. She's had everything checked by vets and body workers. When she asks her to trot in hand, she displays colic-like signs. Even though she's been doing groundwork with her for years, she's nice and soft to follow what she's asking her to do. But the touching, Sarah is a bit of mystified by. Would like to know if you've got any tips on how she can, she can touch her with a flag and other things, but she's still really struggling getting that hand on her.
Mindset with her, I know her, Sarah, because I've seen her. I remember, so she was always going to present a tricky sort of emotional sort of mare. And just before anyone sort of gets on board and says, you know, what about this? What if it's twisted ovaries? What if it's that? What if it's this? Before we just use training to fix it, Sarah's already had looked into things. So you know, and I'll always say, you know, there's always things that might be something else I can't answer. But the question to me, for especially through this podcast that everyone asks, is what's the emotional side of it or the training side of it that you would look into? So it's everybody's responsibility to look at the other areas of a horse, to say, you know, a vet or someone comes in to have a look at other things. But so I'm just looking at the training side of things, and I think she's in that mindset and she doesn't know how to get out of it. I'm not saying there is a way out of it, but I believe if I always said that, then I'd be helpless as a clinician because I wouldn't try hard enough. And I've seen a lot of horses in some pretty ordinary mindsets that we make a shift and they start to come out of it. And it's hard for us to do. Like I've seen horses that just pace fences and they're constantly anxious, and then all of a sudden we reset them and get them to think a little bit differently, and then all of a sudden their world changes a little bit. And I'd like to think aggressive hormonal behaviour is something we can also, you know, they get set in a rut, and that's what starts to happen. That's what they do. That's how they feel. And people do the same thing, and it's trying to get them to come outside that rut. So basically, I think she needs more caution. Not caution in the sense that other horses, you know, don't come near me. That's more of a defensive. I don't want you in my space. I've got sensory processing, and it's almost like when something comes near her to do something with her, she sets up her barriers straight away. Whether it's a person, touch, things like that, she sets up a barrier in a defensive sort of mindset. So basically, you can shift a defensive mindset by making a more cautious mindset and a flight response in her. Now, you can do that by doing something that makes her go, oh, I didn't expect that, and then make it disappear. Like, you know, someone's going to pop a flag, but she probably knows when you're going to pop the flag so many times that she kind of gets defensive about when you pop the flag or do something. But what I'm saying is you can actually reset a defensive mindset by creating, it's almost like, oh, did you see that grenade just explode over there? What? You know, like I've seen horses like look like they want to kill someone, and then, you know, a door slams and they turn around and go, geez, what was that? That really scared me. And then the person goes up to the horse and the horse sniffs and goes, oh, thanks, I'm glad you're here. I was really scared of that door. But only a second ago they wanted to kill the person because the person was walking up to them when they were eating hay. So it was just the mindset of that horse and what it was thinking and feeling at the time. And it was in a defensive mindset. It wanted to protect its hay because it's always had, you know, food anxiety because it's always had to fight and rough and tumble for some scraps of hay somewhere when it was brought up. So it doesn't, no matter what, if you're a horse or not, you walk near that horse near hay, it gets angry. But then all of a sudden when it goes, okay, I'm in danger, that defensive mindset disappears and the horse goes, oh, what am I going to do now? That's a neutral danger. I don't know what to do about it. And then you come along as the saviour. And all of a sudden the horse is soft. And that's how quickly a horse lets go of things, just like toddlers let go of things. And if you can harness that with these horses, and that's when I've got a horse like that, I really try and harness the power of sometimes aware distraction. What I mean by aware distraction, a distraction that makes the horse feel insecure and sometimes a little needy. And then all of a sudden you've shifted the barrier, the wall of I don't want you in, and they want to open up to sort of for your ideas and help. And I think that brings out the caution, whereas what she's got is she's just got this impulsive anxiety, defensiveness, and she just rolls into that mindset all the time, just like a horse paces the fence every day when it gets anxious, like another horse gets anxious and starts to suck on a post or windsuck or crib bite. I'd like to think you could shift that mindset, and I believe you can. And I think with your training with both these horses that have these things is stand there and work on a centered mindset, create clear boundaries, but don't get in their face or their space until you see a softening and a change in their awareness and ability to process where they are, where their boundaries are, you know, things like that. And I've done it with a lot of horses where I say this horse is not ready for serious training until it can manage itself a lot better and it finds the answers itself a lot better in just coping with things in a more positive way. Like I've taught horses that were super aggressive around food to lead to food quietly and share it with another horse by changing the way they thought about the food meters away from the food until they walked softly up to the food and ate it. So I know you can get a horse out of that aggressive, kind of persistent negative mindset. It's just a matter of, really putting your eggs in that basket for a while before you overdo too many other things with them.
So it's a case of really just honing in on helping them to have a different train of thought.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
It's like this, like I say all the time, let go of that thought. It's not available. And another one will come up. It's just they'll always go for the first neuro pathway that they always go to. It's like bringing up teenage children. There's always that defensive. I didn't do it. I wasn't asking that. I was just asking. No, but I didn't do it. I wasn't me. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. You just went straight for that. I was actually going to ask you about how school was or something else. But that's what they go for. That one, and horses are the same.
Can you suggest a video or what to do for Annette? She's got a horse that refuses to move forward on the ground. She usually uses a rein or a lead rope because if she gets too close to him, he nips her. Sometimes he will only take one step. She's tried doing several things. She's tried moving to the side, she's tried waving a flag to distract him, and she's tried getting him to go in a circle to get perpetual motion. She's not finding she's getting any consistent responses, and it is probably translating into riding because she can't get a consistent canter. Have you got any suggestions for Annette?
Sounds like he's gently blocking a little bit everywhere. And he knows your rhythm, your repetition. He knows how much pressure you apply when you use the flag. He knows how big you're willing to go or not to go. He pretty well, I think he's got you covered in the sense of predicting what you're going to do and how much he can sort of turn off to. He might have strong thoughts for certain reasons. There might be a whole bunch of things going on there, but most cases I see people try and do something that I've told them to do, yet maybe they thought number 5 in pressure was number 10, and I went, no, actually number 10 is number 10. And, so basically whatever you do, whether it's pick up a rope or pop a flag on your leg or do a backflip off a mounting block, it has to create enough awareness to get the horse to search it and think about changing. Otherwise, it just becomes just another white noise and a blur. And if you gently turn the white noise up over weeks, gentle by gentle, you turn that volume up over weeks, next minute you're playing full volume heavy metal music around your horse, and they're completely deaf to it. So and I think that's what happens. We just gently turn the volume up over time, but then the horses become dull, and they get a little bit duller. And if they've got a strong thought, then they just shell up, hide in their shell, think about not wanting to leave home, and it starts to work. So, distraction, like I talked about the mares, changing that mindset, being able to interrupt them clearly enough is really, really important, however you do it. Sometimes I've had a horse like that I pick up the lead and you just see it block and just go, no, I'm not listening. And I'll just walk past and there'll be a drum or a can, and I'll throw the can against the wall and the horse will go, geez, what was that? And I go, well, I don't know. And the horse will go, what? And I said, would you like the hand? Why don't you follow me and I'll show you I can help you. And then you just broke that mindset, but it was a quick distraction that broke that mindset, and it could be just something slightly random. But just remember, everybody, when you do something random, you could make, get yourself in a compromising situation. But usually I create that distraction, and then I can offer the horse some help, because once they shell up and go into their shell, they're kind of folding their arms and they're sort of blocking you out. So even if you came later on and said, well, I'm going to try carrots and positive reinforcement, see if that's going to get you to come out a bit, then they go, oh, well, I'll come out for the carrot, but I've still got my arms closed for you and the lead rein and all that other stuff, but carrot's fine. but you haven't sort of give them a reason to search except for to get the food. So, but sometimes when it's something that made them go, oh, I don't know what to do, then they're more able for you to guide them and help them. So you just got to get big enough and do something to get them to sort of blink and go, what just happened? And sometimes that's a little bit of a spook. To kind of, it's almost like to say, get out of your shell for a second, and then you get this opportunity that you can help them a little bit. But it's how you kind of create that little bit of a spook that's going to be essential. Like, you don't want to be a bully and just start chasing them around and making them scared of you. Though they might be scared that something happened around you, it's not personal. It's just sort of something to get them out of the shell.
And suggesting a video that she can look at?
Oh, any of the ones where I'm creating distraction in horses is really important. Like, you see, so any of the horses that have got a strong gaze or anything like that, they're off, or they're, where I create a distraction and an awareness when they've got big, strong thoughts. They mightn't look like a horse that's hunkering down, but it's still a similar thing because they're locking and fixating. The other thing you might want to look at is any of the leading exercises. There's ones with sort of horses that lean a bit that I'll try lots of things where I'm saying, come on at a distance, lead up. But eventually you want to get in close too, because the reason why your horse is nipping and biting, it hasn't found softness in that lead rope. And until that leading's working really good, you should be able to put your hand underneath the knot and they're completely comfortable with that. Them fighting that shows that like he just goes, oh, this is just all kind of you playing with my face and I don't like it. So, you've got to get them really comfortable with that. But
so a bit of extra clarity perhaps there, and that will of course translate into what's going on with the canter.
Yeah.
Very much so. Okay, hope that helps, Annette. And Jane, she's got a young quarter horse who dislikes being led. Now he was doing quite well, but now it's sort of changed a bit. He leaves a straight line to walk out to the side to pass by, as if in a circle. She's just wondering, should she be blocking him or stopping him or wiggling him back?
I'm guessing, so basically all you've got to look for, so if he goes out in a straight line and wants to leave a little bit, that's him sort of, because there's a point, and it's a very common thing, I see it a lot, is when a horse goes past you, the ones that don't want to go past, they've got two eyes on, and then when they finally go past you, they get a bit the worried point of their eye, and some of them will stop, turn and put two eyes on again, and then once you got them past that, if you haven't quite got them soft enough, they'll just kind of go, oh, I'm off now and I'm leaving. And they'll just suddenly go from wanting to put two eyes on and be like almost hyper-focused to getting that eye past you and going, now I'm leaving. And it's kind of like a bit of an escape. So if it's that sort of thing that's happening, which I think it might be, is you just let them go out on the end of the rope and then you just say, not available, come back again. But before you put them out on the rope and you're leading them by, find the point where they suddenly go, I'm going to leave. And then just stop them and then back them off and say, do that slower and get that nice slow catwalk as they go past till they actually, and keep them at the balance point, that point where they either want to focus with two eyes or leave. There's a point there when they're walking past you, you'll feel it. Slow them down at that point, let them hold that point till they soften that eye and go, oh, I can walk at this position. And then when you feel their whole body soften, their mind soften, you just let them out and let them travel out. If they suddenly get a strong long thought, we interrupt that. So basically, horses are good at doing this because they've got eyes on the side of their head. They've got ears that go backwards and forwards. They're really good at processing what's behind them, better than we are because our eyes are on the front of our heads. So they actually get really good at thinking forward, but still communicating and connecting with us while we're back behind them. The ones that leave are just sort of saying, block them out, and they're just thinking about the destination and leaving. But when you see those ears floating and the horse carrying a forward thought and carrying you there, that's what you want. And you can still turn them off that. But if they could just leave and block you out, I would interrupt the thought, start again, find out there might be a spot early, like I just said, where it's starting to happen that you can catch it a little earlier.
Going from on the ground to under saddle, Mark, Tracy has a horse that is starting to drift a little bit under the reins. This is her green horse who she's gone right back to basics under saddle for some confidence building. So they've been doing a lot of riding in a small area. He seems to be a little bit stiff on the right rein. She's really noticing now, though, that he's drifting left. So she started focusing a lot on the right turns. She's holding until she gets a soft movement and a thought through the right eye. But when she picks up on the right rein, he'll stiffen and initially fight to go to the left. And if they go in a straight line, he'll drift to a loose left turn. What's the best way to reduce that tendency and balance him out?
The first part of the transition, I think, of picking up the rein is important. So when you pick up the side that he blocks against, okay, and it doesn't matter for everyone if it's left or right. It doesn't really matter. It's more so this. So a lot of hot sides, and I think River's a pacer, Tracy's horse, and he's probably, they get that one. You see some of the pacers, they're twisted and they're running forward through one eye a bit like, around the track, and they get used to kind of leaving through one eye. And a lot of horses are like that. They've got a stronger focus eye that when they're a bit worried and they leave, they do it more through one side than the other. And they constantly, their primary focus is kind of wanting to go out that window and look out that window to drive the ship that way. So what you do at a standstill is you pick up on the opposing rein, the one that's, if he's thinking out that right eye and you're picking up the left rein, you pick up the left rein, and if he blocks, so you pick up the weight of it, and you see him, as soon as you see him starting to wander his thoughts out the opposite eye, and he starts to go, well, I can feel that opposing rein, I'm going to think the opposite way. You pick up and you put a little feel through it, or a little bump, or not even a big bump, just to say that's not available. You hold it for a second, and then when the thoughts come back in a bit, then you loosen it, and then you pick up the weight again. So you go from a loose rein to a sort of slightly weighted rein. As soon as you see him leave and you see his thoughts go the opposite way, you pick up a feel and say, that door's closed. And then you'll see him go, oh, that door's closed. And then his thoughts will come back to centre, or he'll flick the ear or think to the side that you picked up the rein, and you let it off and you do it again until he stops thinking the opposite direction when you pick up the weight of the rein. And you just do that a lot every time you're doing your warm-ups or anything like that. And when you walk him, when you pick up on the weight of the rein very slowly, wait for him to leave and block, and then say, not available, that door's closed. And then when he brings his thoughts back, just loosen him off and say, until he stops blocking the initial pickup of the rein. The other thing is when you do your turns and he seems to just let out on a loose rein and drift out that right eye again, you might go turn, let him out a bit, back up a bit, turn again, let him out a bit, back up a bit. Now I'm going to take you through the right eye. So basically, instead of giving him a loose rein so he always leaves to the right, I think it was the right eye he said was the strong side anyway, you'll understand. So instead of allowing him to leave on that side, you might turn him to the left, back him up, and then take him to the right and say, I'll lead you to the right, mate, until he's going, oh, she leads me to the right, and she leads me to the left, and she leads me backwards. And when she lets on a loose rein, I can go straight. So basically, don't allow the releasing of the left rein mean drift right. Don't make drift right available until when you let the reins out, you'll feel him start to stay straight, and you'll go, oh, I might just stay straight in here. Good. I'll let you go straight then. So basically you interrupt that leak by doing something different and deliberately turning him right, so it wasn't his idea always to leak out that way.
Last question for today. Annie has a horse that she thinks is very clever and can have an opinion. She's quite new to your way of training, but she knows that she may be giving some confusion when she's doing the training herself. She had an incident on the weekend. She went to visit a club, took it very slowly and was in hand just so that they could walk through all the obstacles. She ended up saddling him and riding him, and he sort of started to toss his head, and then he put in a couple of bucks. She came off, she's fine, but she wanted to know, how do you tell if it's from bucking is from being anxious or he's had enough? And this is assuming that everything is fine, there's no soreness issues and things like that. He isn't really an anxious horse, he's more a confident horse.
Okay, and there's a little post that we made on Facebook, and also just it was a short newsletter that got sent to everyone via email. And it was just about me belly raping a horse and addressing the trouble in a horse not quietening or relaxing a horse. And there was 2 horses at a clinic. Actually, I'd say 3, because the clinic before this clinic, there was another horse with exactly the same problem. Spooked and bucked. And each one of those horses had some form of misunderstanding or trapped anxiety about carrying a saddle, a rider, and things like that. So I see bucking more so as an expression of what's around the horse that they want to get off versus that thing over there scared me. So if you watch a horse, I mean, there's horses that'll kick up their heels and run off a little bit. But when a horse bucks and they kind of buck up in the air, you know, it's not common that they go and see something over in the distance in a herd and then they all buck and then they run off. They just run off. You don't see horses wasting energy bucking. They want that energy to go somewhere to create distance away from something. Bucking doesn't create distance. So bucking only happens when they want to get something off their back, more so. So I would go and poke the bear a little bit. So sometimes if it's a saddling issue, a leg issue, a carrying a person issue, the belly rope's one of those areas where you can, like and how I poke the bear with these other horses, just to give you an example, was I knew that there was an issue in there by the way they kicked and they bucked a bit and also what the owner said. So I put the belly rope on, stood at a distance till they kind of half forgot it was there. Then I quickly cinched up girth pressure, or just below girth pressure actually. So I pulled it tight and they didn't expect it. Because they didn't expect it, they went, got really worried. And then all of a sudden you just touch them with a bit of pressure on the belly and they're like, I don't know what that is. I'm really frightened. And I said to the owners, I said, you've got more pressure than this when you girth them up. And you girth them up and they carry that saddle. And some people do their girth really tight and that's on them all the time. And they just, what happens, they go through the nervous girthing part of it. They freeze a little bit. The saddle stays on them for long enough. They kind of numb to the feeling that it's there. Then they go on about their business until they get a fright and go, oh, and their rib cage expands. They go, oh, there's all that saddle and stuff that I haven't really got used to. So I poked the bear by putting the girth out of context with the saddle. And you can see how worried they were when they weren't expecting the girth versus when they were expecting the girth. And also you got subtle signs when I saddle a horse, when they're expecting the girth that I look for, like a hardening of the eye, a tensioning of the rib cage, a stillness in their feet that locks up, the breathing shallows, all those things that happen when I'm girthing a horse is telling me, especially if it's a horse that's already a ridden horse, that someone hasn't addressed the girthing tension and the saddling tension or the getting on tension. When you put your foot in the stirrup, when you get on your horse and you suddenly go, oh, geez, a bee's in my ear, and you have a fit and get off. And if your horse has a fit and runs off, you go, oh, crikey, my horse was still having mounting problems because when I had a little fit, the horse got a fright. But when I get on carefully, the horse didn't get a fright. So, you know, you're kind of looking at all those things, and on all the way, you're just gently poking the bear to see if there's something in there. And if I notice there's something in there, and you'll get, you know, I'll kind of see if I can find it and hunt it out, flush it out a bit, and then give the horse a good alternative to it, or teach them how to process that pressure in a better way. So each one of those horses that bucked after they spooked, much like yours did at the obstacle course, I found where the bear was hiding in the rib cage in this respect. I put the belly rope on, poked the bear a bit, and then I said, now process this pressure around your rib cage. Do something thoughtfully, soften, breathe, think forward. Taught them to lead, do other things, and then all of a sudden they went, oh, I'm not frightened of pressure anymore around my belly, and I'm okay. And then all of a sudden you see the whole horse change, and it's like, wow, they've been carrying this sort of look their whole lives under saddle, and it hasn't been fixed. So I think in your horse there is another area you want to be looking at. I don't think it's just environmental stimulant that's causing your horse to kind of spook and buck. I think there's probably a lot of little areas in there where you've got to kind of look at and address, and then take your horse out and see what you got.
It's always a case of looking deeper, isn't it, Mark? All right, you've answered a huge range of topics today. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. I hope that's been helpful to all of the people that have sent the questions through. Thank you to all of you, your members that keep us going. And we do like being able to sort of help you and share your questions to others. There's so many people out there that have exactly the same problems. It's great that they have the opportunity to be able to get some help as well. So thank you. Thanks, Mark. We will be back again next week with another enlightening podcast.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like it, share it, or send us a comment. It all helps in reaching new ears and helping more horses. And if making a change in your horse appeals to you, Mark offers his direct support and a diverse learning platform. Head to marklangley.com.au and grab your 7-day free trial.